Welcome back to Big Up, where we review some of the latest and greatest in vinyl, electronic music on vinyl, mostly drum and bass. Today we're gonna take a look at some of the latest pickups of like modern drum bass that's come out this year, or maybe every once in a while one that's come out last year, but I'm just getting around to it. So let's take a look here. Let's start off with QZB. These are two guys from Switzerland releasing a couple things on Critical. Big fan of Critical in general. I think that they've remained interesting and they push boundaries and they aren't always tied to a sound. I like that. They will take risks. They definitely have kind of veered to the techie side the last couple years. I really like some of their early stuff. They're one of the first labels to release stuff by like Breakage and Alias, which was Breakage and DJ Flight. And I know they're a huge label now, but they continue to release quality stuff. So let's start off with the vinyl. One of the interesting things about this one, if you take a look, it pulls out from the bottom. I mean, I guess it's supposed to be stored that way. I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure if I really totally dig that design. But it is on this pretty translucent blue vinyl. I remain a fan of colored vinyl. It's a 4-track EP. Let's take a look at the songs. If I can get this back in there. Awesome. So, we got Tech Priest, and this one's filled with like real dry drums and some really an arpeggio, real fast arpeggio that's building up, and it's super sci-fi sounding. It reminds me of like the stuff that I first got into in like drum bass, which was Diesel Boy and a lot of the stuff that Stacka, Skynet, Ed Rush Optical. Who else? There's a whole slew of artists that were kind of doing real interesting sci-fi sounding stuff. Ram Trilogy. It's even got it's got some semi-decent, not too great graphic design, computer graphic design, which is very Virus Records around that time. But I really like this first tune. It's dark and rolling and it's got a big driving bass line, and that arpeggio really works. It's good sci-fi drum bass. Underneath is along the same lines, more sci-fi bass stuff. It's got this really good use of MC vocals where it's not like full-on rapping but more like a sample, but it's obviously a sample made for the song. Which is another thing that was kind of big around that time of like my love of Diesel Boy and Ed Rush and Optical and all those guys. It reminds me of MC Rhyme Time. It's clearly not MC Rhyme Time, but just the way that Ed Rush and Optical used Rhyme Time in their tunes. Definitely feeling it. It's a pretty great track. Spaz is more of a roller. It's got definitely some emotional to it. It's got a slight autonomic feel to it, but it's got an autonomic feel that is, the drums are those techie dry drums, the real dry, snappy drums. They're not sampled. They're obviously built. If you're going to ask me what my two favorite are, it'd be a hard argument between Tech Priest and Spez. I think Spez is the one I would listen to the most in my headphones, and Tech Priest would be the one I'm most likely to drop if I'm playing out at a show. And then last we've got Take All VIP, or Take It All VIP, featuring Charlie Bricks. This one's a little bit more of this one I would say is the most basic, the most just kind of like, oh yeah, it's a drum bass tune. It's a drum bass tune that's sci-fi sounding with some dark, a little bit of darkness, some real dry drums. There's nothing wrong with this tune whatsoever. but it'll be the last one I'd probably ever play out. But overall, all 4 tunes are pretty good. 2 of the songs are really amazing. I think this one's worth picking up. But I wouldn't buy it, honestly. With new drum bass and how much it costs, I'm always probably going to give these a pretty positive review. All right, next we got A.Fruit Nocturnal EP. A.Fruit is, and this is on Cosmic Bridge. Cosmic Bridge is Unit's label, and Unit's label, Cosmic Bridge, is one of those labels that I tend to buy on site without even listening to it ahead of time. Unit insists it's not a drum bass label, and he insists it's not a dubstep label. He's released drum bass on it. He's released dubstep on it. He's released a whole lot of footwork on it. What Unit likes to say is it's just good music. It's usually kind of on the more experimental side of any of those genres when he does release it. I looked up A.Fruit. She's just starting out. She's from Russia, which might be kind of why why it's a little bit different. Like, these are definitely heavily influenced by footwork. Like, all 4 of these songs are footwork, and they're dark footwork, and they're super minimal. I mean, they're really pounding in your face. There isn't a lot of melody. There isn't a lot of musicality. It's more about frantic drums. And it's really interesting. I think I'd get kind of bored of all 4 of these songs if I was out in the club, but they're definitely good. It's definitely interesting drum bass. It's interesting enough that I had to own it. I think that we might see some cool things coming from A.Fruit in the future. Cosmic Bridge is a great label. It's well worth the pickup. Next, we have Unit and Kid Drama Untitled Works on Apollo. Apollo, I didn't know this. I don't know much about Apollo, so I looked it up. And it's a sub-label of RNS Records, who released so much influential drum bass, influential electronic music. Apollo has released some amazingly influential electronic music from, like, Aphex Twin. Ambient Sounds, the first Ambient Sounds album came out on Apollo. So they know what they're doing, and this one, all 4 of the songs are untitled, but what you get is unfeathered autonomic tunes in a time that autonomic's kind of gone out of style. I think maybe, and I don't think it's, well, I wonder, is it because of sales, or is it just because those autonomic guys got, bored and wanted to move on? I know that we've had, like, a recent instrumental album come out. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'd like to. And it's supposed to be a lot of the autonomic stuff. So we've got Unit and Kid Drama. Kid Drama is one half of instrumental, one of the inventors of the autonomic sound, along with D-Bridge. Unit's been associated with that crew, though, of Exit Records and the people that are releasing music like that for a very long time. All 4 of these tunes are lush, filled with pads. The drums are not always standard drum and bass, but it's still drum and bass music. But it's drum and bass, it's synthwave, 808s, rolling basses, huge pads. I mean, there's focus on musicality, as in melodies and what's going on. This EP, I didn't give it a real close listen before I grabbed it. I saw Unit, Kid Drama, listened to a couple clips super shortly, and just was like, oh, I'm grabbing that. This one's probably, very easily going to be in my top 10 vinyl releases of 2019. I cannot get enough of this one. I love it. I wish I could still keep getting more autonomic. Next, we got Breakage on Index. Index is Breakage's own label. It's got 3 tunes, sorry. Yeah, Lift Up, and Wicked. So I think I've mentioned it before. I am an absolute over-the-top, huge, massive Breakage fan. I don't think I've ever heard stuff I don't like from him, ever. Like, all of his stuff. I literally will buy something from Breakage, sight unseen, no matter what. So, this is the 4th release on the label, and this is what the type of drum and bass I fell deeply in love with at a very early time. You know, my late teens, early 20s when I first got on drum and bass. This is all about upfront sampled breaks with bass that could literally blow your speakers out if you're not careful. It is all about sub bass. I mean, love techie drum and bass. I love liquidy drum and bass. I love drum funk. I love atmospheric drum and bass. But what I love more than anything is huge subs. Like, I want drum and bass to have more subs in it. So much drum and bass is all about that mid bass. It has been for years and years and years and years, but it's still got to have that sub. I want like a tune that when the bass drops, you run from wherever you are. You could be next in line at the bar, and you just know that this tune's going to be huge because the whole building's rattling. And all 3 of these tunes do that. Lift Up and Wicked, all of them, like, very dub influenced. They've got dub samples in them. It's got a 808, like heavy 808 bass sound type of sound that, you hear from cars that are listening to hip hop. Lift Up is more of a droney bass, a little bit more dark, heavy, and Wicked is the same way. Lift Up has this weird wobble in the bass that, when a lot of times when people talk about wobbles in bass, and especially in drum and bass, it's not a good thing. It's a good thing. It's just like a little LFO on it, just enough to give it some movement. This EP is amazing. Grab that one. Last, we have Ulterior Motive on Guidance. So Guidance is Ulterior Motive's label. And we've got Trip Hammer and Intuition with Quadrant and Iris. So as we learned in my last video, I pretty much buy anything with Quadrant and Iris just because they're local and I'm huge fans. I like what they do. I think they have a true passion for drum and bass. So they're something I'm going to get no matter what. So both these tunes are pretty techy. Trip Hammer they're techy in a way that's got that funk, and that's so hard to like describe. It's that movement that makes you want to dance. So much of that stuff just loses all that. It loses its soul, especially really hard techie stuff. At least I don't want to dance to it. The stuff that's kind of emulated after like heavy metal or something. Stuff like Noisea's early works, or some of TV and Calyx's earlier works, or Dylan, Tech Itch. That stuff, it loses all its soul to me. I mean, it's really technical and it's really impressive what they can do, but I don't want to dance to it. I don't want to mosh to it. I just don't find it. But both of these tunes keep that. Trip Hammer has like some interesting use of stabs as percussion, which I think is great. Like it feels kind of like a retro thing at this point where people add stabs into their drum tracks, and I think that was a lot of times done as because of limitations of hardware, but it's no longer that way. And so I think that the way that they're done now is great. And then Intuition, the one with Quadrant Iris, it definitely brings in that a little more melody than Trip Hammer, which I think is what Iris and Quadrant do so well when they do collabs with other people. A lot of times it seems to kind of smooth them out, make them a little more musical, make them a little more dancey, without taking away any edge. So these are some of my latest drum and bass pickups from this year. I highly recommend all of them. I think that there's some good stuff there. So make sure to check them out. The links to the Discogs and Spotify will be in the description. If you're digging what we're doing, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks.